YouTube. It's been a while, but I'm back talking about Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. When I did my last video, the first secret units had just come out. Now, the game has been out for quite a bit longer. We have multiple new factions and a ton more secret units. The Dynasty faction, Renaissance faction, Pirate faction, and Spooky factions have all been released, and all of them, in my opinion, have been very good. But today it's time to talk about some upcoming faction news, as well as a few things that I really want to see in the game. Just recently, the Totally Accurate Battle Simulator Landfall YouTube channel released a trailer for the Wild West faction, which shows a lot of the cool new units in action and battle. I just thought I would go through a few of the units that were shown and try to get a good sense of what they might be. First appears to be this gunman of sorts, possibly a duelist. In the trailer, it seemed that this unit was able to fire off 6 shots in rapid succession, and so I don't think this is going to be the faction's most inexpensive unit, despite looking like one of its more unassuming. Next to it is this group of characters who seem to have a large bundle of TNT. In the trailer, it appears that they throw this explosive and then charge into battle, similar to how the flintlock pistol unit in the Pirate faction works. It's a lot like a grenade, but then there's the charge in afterwards, so it separates this unit from other units which use explosives by having it only be a one-time use effect. Next, we have this unit with a rifle of sorts, much more Western-style rifle. It seemed that the unit was spinning the rifle in between shots, and it looks like this is likely going to be a fairly powerful unit. Next to that, we have a man in a cactus suit. This is probably one of the more interesting or humorous units in the faction. And as I found, there were 8 units displayed in the trailer, while most factions only have 7 units in their roster, which leads me to believe that at least one of these units will be a secret unit. And my best guess as to which unit would be this secret unit which is mentioned would probably be this cactus suit individual. The final image on this page is that of a miner with a pickaxe. There was very little footage of this unit shown in the trailer, but it seems like they're just going to have a melee attack, which leads me to believe that this prospector unit is probably going to be one of the cheaper units in the faction. The other 3 units shown in the trailer were these 2 outlaws who throw a large safe with money. They could also be secret units, as it could be possible that the safe could be found. And I think that they're going to operate in a manner similar to the Viking longship, where placing one outlaws with safe down is going to spawn in both units. As you can see, they don't each throw an individual safe, but are both carrying a much larger one. I suspect this will be one of the higher cost units. In the middle, we have this somewhat military-looking lance cavalry unit. They have revolvers on their belts, which makes me wonder if they'd be able to take those out and fire, or if they're just for display. It's likely that this Western faction is going to be a much more ranged-focused faction, a lot like the Pirates were. The Pirates didn't really have any true melee units, with all of their units either having access to firearms or having special abilities that involve explosives and ranged attacks, such as the Harpooner bringing units in, or the Flintlocks having pistols that they throw away, or the cannon, or the pirate captain's somewhat shotgun-like, not blunderbuss, but pistol. And then finally we have this other unit who seems to be very well dressed, possibly a sheriff of some sort, firing his pistol up into the air. It seems like this unit will probably be one of the higher cost units, and its main ability seems to be causing enemy units to lay down, essentially at the loud noise of the pistol, which is very interesting. There have been a lot of examples of Totally Accurate Battle Simulator trying to implement something similar to status effects into the game, such as an original concept for the Bard being a unit in the Farmer faction, which caused enemy units to dance. As well, I believe that there was a Shaman unit in early stages that was proposed with a similar ability, and the Skeleton units, which have actually been added into the game, have a status effect that causes enemy units to run away, and they get this glowing purple skull over their heads. So finally, other than the units that were shown in this trailer, let's talk about other things that'll be upcoming. In the title of the video released by Landfall, it said, New Wild West Faction and Win Conditions, which means that we're likely going to be seeing other win conditions for the game once they've ironed out all the bugs, which could be very interesting. Ironically enough, it might make simulating a totally accurate battle more possible because in history, most battles did not end with one side wiping the other out entirely. Instead, units would rout off of the battlefield, and taking over 50% casualties was extremely devastating for an army, where in tabs, one side will always take 100% casualties unless there's some sort of glitch that prolongs the game indefinitely. Second, there's a new map shown in the background of the Wild West trailer. It seems to be some sort of long street that parties will duel down, replicating the iconic Wild Western trope of the high noon duel in the middle of town. The map has very cool and unique lighting, and I think it should be a pretty fun place to have battles. One interesting trend I've noticed in recent Tabs games is that they've been trying to up the details of the map rather than having the numbers, because whereas the factions that were in the game initially all have 2 or 3 maps, some of them even having sandboxes, all of the factions added since have only had 1 map, but those maps tend to be more detailed and complex, as well as being more unique. Finally, there's a good chance that we can expect to see a modern faction at some point in the future. I'm unsure as to when, but that seems like it's likely a road that Tabs is going down, especially as they seem to be introducing more and more modern factions as the game progresses, such as the Renaissance and Pirate factions, which are far more modern than anything we had before then. Next, I think that we will likely be seeing more secret units with the introduction of the Western faction. There will, in all likelihood, be one unit directly connected with them, but one thing I'd really hope that we get is a Napoleonic-type line infantry. That's something that had been in the early versions of Tabs before it was released, as well as being featured in some trailers, and it was something that I think would be really cool. Although we do have the Musketeers in the Renaissance faction, they have a very different type of helmet and do not look like Napoleonic line infantry. I think it would be kind of interesting to have a type of unit that perhaps is a bit more expensive, but has a faster reload time, as well as a bayonet on their rifle, because during the Renaissance, the bayonet was not something that was typically used with a musket. They were typically used in pike formations. Later, plug bayonets were developed, which went into the muzzle of the rifle, but that meant that once you plugged your bayonet, you couldn't fire very easily without removing the bayonet first. But once you got bayonets that essentially attached to the side of a weapon, that's when pikes somewhat became obsolete in battle formations and were largely replaced exclusively with rifle infantry. And so that's a pretty interesting distinction that you could make between the Musketeers of the Renaissance faction and line infantry for the Napoleonic faction. I would definitely be fine if this was a secret unit and there was only this unit in there. As cool as something like Saber Cavalry or a Standard Bearer would be, I would still just be happy with one unit that gives representation to this time period, because it looks like with the Pirate faction not including any Napoleonic units, and the Western faction taking place after the Napoleonic time period, it seems unlikely that we'll be getting a whole faction based around this style of battle. But like, we've already seen similar units in the past, and I really hope that we can see at least one unit of this type with the very cool shako hats. And during the Napoleonic time period, you had both red and blue uniforms, so I think the Tabs team could come up with something really great if they just made a unit somewhat based on this concept that's up on screen. So yes, that's something that I'd like to see. Other things that I'd like to see, but are less pressing. I would be extremely disappointed if we never got any sort of Napoleonic units in the game, but these other things I think would just be cool. Immovable units or fortifications, or things that stay in place and have units in them. One thing I think a lot of people would like to see in Tabs are like siege battles, things such as that. And that's definitely something that I think the game would benefit from. It might not fit with the style that they're going for, but again, it's just a suggestion. And I think that people would just be very excited and happy whatever we see. I'll also be interested to find out just how many new secret units are going to come with this. Admittedly, this video was primarily made just for me to plug the Napoleonic line infantry riflemen, because I really, really want to see those in the game. I think they could be such cool units, and even if we don't have a faction based around them, I would be extremely disappointed if the Musketeers were the closest we ever got to this type of unit. Anyway, that's about all I have for today. See you later. And to the Landfall team, I doubt any